Hi, I want to show you my first add-on for Blender. Enjoy watching, everyone. To install the add-on, you just need to drag the zip archive into the program window and click OK. After this, a panel with the add-on will appear in your 3D window. To remove the add-on, you need to go to the Program Settings, then go to the Add-ons tab. Find it there and click the Uninstall button. Currently, the main rule for the correct work of the add-on is that you need to take into account the exact number of vertices on the borders, but I plan to add the ability to exclude certain vertices when their number may not match. If the number of vertices on the borders does not match, you cannot transfer mesh. You can open the console and see that the number of vertices does not match. Now I will remove some edges to get an equal number of vertices on the boundaries. Since I previously selected the opposite mesh and clicked the Get Patch button, the data about the transferred mesh is recorded in memory, so we can skip this step. So I'll just select the part of the mesh that I want to replace with another one and click the Transfer button. You can see that the mesh is not quite correct, as it was inverted during the calculation of the position. In order to fix this, I will press the Rollback button and select the X-axis in the mirror parameter in order to invert the mesh. Now the mesh transfer is done correctly. This way, you can transfer any mesh without having to edit the mesh or repeat actions on a similar area. You can make the topology you need in one place and then transfer it to any other place where it is appropriate. Now I'll show you how it works on another mesh. First, I will get the mesh data that I want to move, and then I will select the area where I want to insert this mesh. That's all. I think it's much faster than doing it manually. Let's do the same thing on another mesh. Only now we will transfer the mesh to two areas at once. Now I'm going to intentionally break the mesh to show how you can quickly edit the mesh without having to do it all over again. And now I will again simply select the mesh pattern I need to insert it into the place where exactly the same part of the mesh is required. In just a couple of steps, instead of hundreds of manipulations, we create a similar mesh in a similar area. Now I will tell you about other parameters. The first of them is the button to reset the menu parameters to their initial values. The Select Inner option will help you select inner polygons by edge boundaries so you don't have to select them manually. You can move a mesh of any shape to any position, regardless of the object's position. Now I will get data about the new mesh that I want to place on another mesh. At the moment the mesh has moved upside down. To fix this, you need to use the mirror parameter. We can also change the scale of the mesh, but I do not advise you to use too low or too high values, as this can lead to incorrect stitching of the patch vertices with the main mesh. But this parameter can help you adjust the scale in some cases so that the mesh fits more correctly. When a pattern has border edges of equal length, it may sometimes be rotated incorrectly around its local z-axis. For this, we can use the Rotate parameter. The Smooth parameter smooths the entire internal mesh without affecting the boundary vertices. This can be used most often on flat surfaces to distribute the mesh more evenly. Now I will show you another example where you may need the Rotate parameter. You also have the ability to edit the normals of the polygons. This can help you correct the direction of the polygons if the insertion happened with the normals turned in the wrong direction. Also, if two regions have one common vertex, they are considered separate from each other, so you can use this. This can happen if your patch is made up of multiple separate meshes, but if the mesh is solid, it should be fine. In either case, you can fix it using the Normal Fix tools. You can also invert the normals of the polygons and clean them up, if they are not displayed correctly in the viewport. The Concave and Convex parameter helps to turn all meshes in one direction, taking into account the shape. This works correctly if you have a plane, but when the shape is semicircular or uneven, copies can stand in different directions, so it is better to insert them separately in such cases. If the object has an uneven surface, as I already said, insert the mesh separately. This will eliminate the problem with the direction. In any case, this needs to be tested, since this may be correct even in the case of an uneven surface. You can transfer mesh even if the boundaries are different in shape, but it is best to use more similar boundary shapes. As you can see, this mesh has problems in topology. Now I will restore it. First, I will get the mesh data that I want to insert, and then I will select the polygons that I will replace with the correct topology. Now I will completely select this part of the mesh and paste it into another part of the mesh. Now I will repeat the same thing, but with another part of the mesh. As you can see, it is very quick and easy. Let's move on to the next parameters. The next two parameters, hole short and patch short, determined by the length of the borders into which border to insert the mesh, either by the longest border or by the shortest one. If the parameter is activated, the short border of the hole is used. Since we now have patch short activated, this means that the alignment of the object will occur along the short border for the inserted mesh. Now I will invert the normals of the polygons. Now I will do the same, but with the patch short parameter disabled. Next, you can see how I will continue modeling geometry using this add-on. The next parameter. Both is necessary if our mesh has two boundaries, for example, internal and external. This will allow us to stitch the vertices of both boundaries with the main mesh. As you can see when inserting a mesh, the polygon in the middle was deleted. In order to save it, you just need to execute the Inset Faces command to add polygons inside. Let's enable the both option to stitch both borders together. We didn't succeed. This is because the vertices of the inner border are too far from the vertices of the base mesh border. For this, we just need to move these vertices a little so that the add-on can determine where the vertices should be stitched. Now everything is fine, and the tool was able to determine for the vertices where they should be stitched. The last parameter is using library. This is an experimental function that, based on the shape of the border, searches for a suitable mesh shape in the library. But at the moment, there are only 31 shapes, but in the future I will plan to add more shapes. After we activate this parameter and then click on the transfer button, we will search for the form by the vertices of the borders and by the form itself of suitable patches in the library, and if such are found, you will receive their thumbnails, after which you will be able to choose the most suitable of the found meshes. Since the circle has equal edge lengths around the perimeter, the tool couldn't determine the correct rotation, so you can do this using the rotate parameter. You may also have noticed that the thumbnails have a number in the lower right corner, 2 or 3. 2 means that the mesh is flat, and 3 means that the mesh has volume. Also, after activating Use Library, 2 parameters open for you. The first of them is responsible for how many edges will be used to search for a pattern from the library. The number 0 means that all edges along the border will be used. The higher the value, the less accurate the search for forms. The matching parameter is something like a search parameter. The number 1 means that the shape must match 100%. The lower the value, the more meshes will be found in the library, but their shape may be less suitable for insertion. I would also like to explain the hole short parameter to you. It works similarly to patch short, but for the main mesh where the patch will be inserted. If the parameter is inactive, the patch will be inserted into the longest border. If activated, then the patch will be inserted into the short border. In other words, this is a border switch, or we use a long border or a short one. This is useful if we have a hole in the mesh or at the patch. And the last parameter in the panel that is responsible for undoing actions. It is better to use it instead of Ctrl-Z. But it is important to remember if you do any action after inserting a mesh, you will not be able to undo it, only through Ctrl-Z. That's it. I hope I showed and explained all the main points of mesh transfer. In any case, I am ready to answer your questions if you have any, and thanks for watching. I will be glad to receive feedback. Additional information is at the bottom of the video. Bye everyone.